Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Team Comp Tuesday, actually on Tuesday, the series where each week we take a look at a different team comp. Nahida is here. Nahida came out last week. We did the all Archon team for fun. Now we're going to show off what I think is, which is the main kind of setup I will be using for Nahida teams, which is the Nahida Hyperbloom team, which is just so much fun and does so much damage and actually has a lot of different variations. I'm going to be showing off the variation that I'm going to be using due to the characters I have, but also just kind of the way I personally like to play the team. So let's get into it. We talked about it briefly in the previous Hyperbloom team, which is a all 4-star variation kind of this team comp, which is still a very, very viable team and still is kind of good with Nahida. There are some slight variations, which is why this is a different team setup, despite the fact that there are some of the same characters. But for anybody who doesn't know, Hyperbloom is essentially the reaction bloom followed by hitting the bloom with electricity to then turn it into a single target homing projectile that just does a lot of damage. And that is essentially what all kind of Hyperbloom teams are built around. Applying a lot of Hydro and Dendro to something, and then applying Electro to the cores on the ground. There's kind of specific Electro units you want to use for these teams, since your Electro unit is the character whose EM will be triggering everything. So you want them to be built almost completely full EM, but also there's some characters that are worse triggers, some characters that are better triggers, and this team we're going to be using Raiden, as she's probably the best and most consistent trigger. That is an Electro character. In the previous video we used an Emo character to be the trigger, but this team comp uses an Electro character as the trigger. Alright, so real quickly before we go on to the builds, I just want to briefly touch on why we're using a Raiden as the trigger. It's due to how easy she makes it to trigger seeds. As you see, she just does an Electro hit every time you hit somebody with her... Oh, almost every time. It's a very small cooldown. Every time you hit somebody with an auto attack. This makes it super easy to trigger with Raiden, even when Raiden isn't the on-field unit. Therefore allowing you to do range triggers with someone like Nahida, while still applying more Dendro with her because of her auto attacks applying Dendro. Or even being able to use someone like Yelan from range to apply it. It just makes it really convenient, and that's why she in general is, in my opinion, the best Electro trigger for these kinds of teams. And that kind of is the key difference between this sort of setup of Hyperbloom versus the other one, is that the fact that it's an Electro trigger versus the other one, which was an Emo trigger in Sucrose. But let's get into the builds. Nahida's first. So for weapons, in this kind of team, you actually don't necessarily have to build her for Elemental Mastery. I just have her set up so that I can basically use her on any team and not have to swap around and mess with her gear. But you could totally build her like full damage, go something like Dodeko Tails or a 5-star book, or where is it, Witstiff, something like that if you want to. I personally just use Sackfrag still, just because it's nice, convenient. Her main damage ability does still scale with EM, so it's not that bad to really run EM. For artifacts, you want to hook her up with a Deepwood Memories set. That is by far the best set for this kind of team, giving you that Dendro res, since the Hyperbloom is actually Dendro damage. It's basically the VV for this team. Same thing here, EM or attack on the Sands actually for this build. I like EM. I also just have a better EM Sands. Goblet, Dendro damage, and crit on this. Since she's not the trigger for these, you actually don't need to build her full EM, or full EM it gets a little bit worse, unlike it would be in like an Aggravate team. And for talents, you want to basically level everything up, but you don't really have to get her auto attack that high. It doesn't have crazy multipliers. You mainly just do it because as a Catalyst character, her auto attacks apply Dendro. Her E is definitely the most important skill in that it gives her most of her damage and a lot of her thing. And her ultimate is definitely very good, as it just does a lot of things for this character, making the duration increase because the double Hydro characters is super nice, and the trigger interval decrease because we have a electric hair is actually pretty good. And that actually, all these stats, all the buffs you get from this actually do go up when you level this up. So definitely it is worth leveling up her burst and her E for this kind of team comp. Alright, next up is Raiden, who is built full EM in this team, as she is the electro trigger for our things, which is actually super easy to do and super easy to build. Weapons, any EM substat, Dragon's Bane being the best because it has the highest, but Catan Cross also being pretty good. Artifact set, 4-piece Gilded Dreams if you have it. If you don't have a 4-piece Gilded Dreams, then I would go with a 2-2 mix of Wonders and Gilded Dreams just to give you more Elemental Mastery. It's not that big of a difference between the two sets, as the buff down here only will give you an extra 100 and the 80 on the 2 set of this, so it's only like a 20 EM difference. But EM main set on everything. Talents honestly don't matter, but for normal Raiden you'll probably have E and Burst leveled up anyway. Alright, and next up is our first of our Hydro units, which is Yelan. You actually can use different Hydro units here and kind of swap up who's on team, or maybe use Kazuha here, or use Zhong Li if you need a shielder here. Personally, I like Yelan here. I think she's the most fun. It lets you play Nahida on field, which is fun because she has such a unique auto attack animation and stuff, but up to you. Weapons, Favonius Bow. If you have her signature bow, you can go for it. Attack doesn't really matter for her, so you kind of don't really care about main attack. You could do something like this for a crit stick. If you have her, what's the other bow? Elegy. Elegy is also very good in this team. But everybody has Favonius bow, so just kind of use Favonius. Artifact set, Emblem of Severed Fate, stats, Hydro damage on the Goblet. Circlet is crit rate or crit dam. And Sans is an HP Sans, since her abilities only scale off her HP. Ideally, you want to try to get some ER on her if you can, especially if you're not using an ER main or substat weapon. You might have to use an ER Sans here. You have to mess around with that yourself a little bit. For skills, E and Burst are the main ones you care about for damage. Alright, and last but certainly not least is Xingqiu. If you're going to use a solo Hydro unit as the Bloom Maker, I would definitely do Xingqiu over Yelan, but using both them together is great because they just synergize pretty well, and they do good damn. Weapons, Sack Sword is probably your best in slot. It just synergizes super well with his kit, gives him energy because he's energy hungry. If not, any sort of crit or attack kind of weapon would be alright for him, but Sack Sword definitely if you have it. Artifact set, same thing as Yelan actually. You want to run him on Quad Emblem. I just have an old set for him, pre-Emblem release, that just has good substats on it, so 2 Noblesse, 2 Heart is actually also an option if you wanted to. But ideally, you want to get him on an Emblem set as well. For Sans, either Energy Recharge or Attack. I personally run Energy Recharge because I like to over-Energy Recharge my characters, so I can be lazy if stuff goes wrong. But especially in a comp like this, and with Sack Sword, you probably run an Attack Sans on him if you want to. For Goblet, Hydro, and for Hat, Crit Rate or Crit Dam. Talents, E and Ultimate are the main things you want to level up, as they'll be giving you the most damage. Alright, here we are at the training dummy, basically, for an example rotation. So since this is very similar to like a other Hyperbloom teams or other what are they called, taser style teams, where it's like, honestly, you just kind of keep everybody's ability up. Make sure Raiden's ability's up. Make sure Nahida's E is on people. Keep her burst up. And then you're literally just Xingqiu bursting and Yelan bursting off cooldown. And you just use Nahida's autos in order to slap. And bam, already dead. This team does so much damn. And it is very, very easy. Well, not easy, like, to maintain, because it doesn't have a healer, so you need to dodge well. Not me almost dying on Xingqiu. But there is no really hard rotation. You just want to make sure all of your different buffs and bursts are running as often as possible, and you're basically good to go at that point. Alright, I want to thank you for coming out for this week's episode. Next week we will be back with another episode. I'm not exactly sure what it's going to be on. We do have Child coming out relatively soon, and I already did the international team, but I might do I might just do one of my fun teams that I play next week, that I use just for open world or something like that. And then the week after that, we might try to do like some Child Dendro shenanigans or something like that. So look forward to that in 2 weeks. But next week's is probably going to be a more fun, lighthearted open world team. But thank you for coming out. I hope you have good luck if you're wishing on Nahida. She's so awesome. I love her. Her animations, her gameplay, everything is she's just so fun. She's such a great addition to the roster. But that's all for me, and I hope you have a great day.